YouTube, and welcome to this little movie review I'm gonna be making. I'll just draw some yarn, don't worry. And the movie that I watched, I would like to put some context onto how I watched it, just so you know. I was making something out of yarn for my stepmom, which is good. She's a nice lady. But basically, she got me this giant ball of yarn, and this is the entirety. It's enormous. This is my hand. Like, this is the difference. It's enormous. It's great. And basically, I was sitting and I was making this thing for my aunt, my stepaunt. Well, they're not married, so I don't really know if they count, but it's not really. I don't know if there's a word that accounts for it in English. But basically, my dad's girlfriend. I was making something for my dad's girlfriend. I'm also making something right now. So pretty. I love this yarn. Not the point. This is not a yarn review. A yarn review, that would be great. But basically, I was watching the movie and thinking of ending things. And that movie was good. It was a good movie. I quite like it. There are gonna be a few spoilers in this video, just so you know. So if you are anti-spoilers for this movie, you should, in fact, not be watching this video right now. But if you don't mind the spoilers, so you've already seen the movie, like, it's okay not to see the movie before you watch this, believe me. It is very confusing, and it is, in fact, I don't know if it's worthy of your time, actually. It's a very confusing movie to watch. It's a good movie, but it's also extremely confusing, and if you don't know what's happening, you are going to get confused, which is what happened to me. But anyways, I'm going to walk you through my experience of watching the movie. So, I don't know the actor's name, so I'm just going to refer to them as Lucy, which is the redhead girl, and I'm going to refer to them as Jake, which is the leading man. I think he would like the description. And then there is the mother and the father. But basically, what happens in the movie is that Lucy, who is first portrayed in a red hat, red jacket, and a yellow shirt, gets picked up by Jake, and there is this shadowy person in a window. But they don't actually factor into anything except for waving, which then mirrors later in the movie after a really awkward car scene, where Lucy and Jake, they sit and they talk, and Lucy gets a phone call from Lucy. But anyways, there is this person who is waving in the window, and then when they get to this farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, where Jake used to live with his parents, the mom is in a room upstairs and she's also waving, and then Lucy, who's now in different clothes, and Jake, they wave off to her, and then Jake takes Lucy into a stable, I believe it is, where they have some sheep, and there are some frozen dead baby lambs, and that made me really sad. I barely saw them, and it just, like, I wanted to cry. I think it's because mortality is just a big theme in my life right now. But anyways, there are these dead sheep, dead lambs. And then there is a story about some dead pigs who got eaten alive by maggots. Another good reason to be very, very afraid of maggots. Then there is a dog, and the dog is very cute. And Lucy says that she loves dogs, which is just adorable. And at that point, I just love Lucy. Because she likes dogs. And Lucy is kind of represented by two colors throughout the entire movie, which is the color red and the color blue. She is wearing red at the beginning of the movie, along with yellow, and then she puts on blue for the rest of the movie, basically. But her hair is still red, and that is interesting, I think, because those colors hold certain meanings to them. But I'm not gonna dig too much into that right now because it's like almost midnight, so I don't want to do that because I get very tired very quickly. But basic say in this movie, it seems that red is a like a fairy tale color, and blue is the color reality. And the reason why I say that is because, uh, of course, Lucy has red hair, and throughout the movie, it's kind of debatable whether she's a real person or not. I think most people end up on Lucy not being a real person, but instead a figment of Jake's imagination or his broken mind. That's not the point. The point is that she wears red in the beginning, and red is the color of fantasy. Because later in the movie there is a movie in the movie where the main character girl also has red hair and she works in a red diner, and there is this ice cream shop which is also colored red. So I believe that red is the color of fiction and blue is the color of reality. Uh, Blue mixed with something else is also a figment, but it's a figment based in reality in my reading of the movie. But anyways, they get to the parents' house, and both parents seem to be kinda not reacting or interacting with Jake. They're way more interested in his quote unquote new girlfriend Lucy, who changed his name throughout the movie, which is why I decided to just settle on Lucy because that's her original name. But anyways, her name goes from Lucy to how do I say that name again? Lucy to Louisa. Um, at one point, and she actually gets a lot of phone calls from people with her own name. And there's this quote in the movie, but I don't remember it, and I can't be bothered to look it up right now. I'm very tired. But anyways, something is very immediately not normal, and the first sign I saw of this, because I'm a blind mouse, was when after they eat dinner, they go into the living room to have a deep conversation about age and about life in general. It's a very awkward dinner, by the way. Everything is awkward in this movie. When I watched the movie, it was just like, this movie's awkward. This movie's really fucking awkward. I also forgot that this movie was actually made public in 2020, so that's pretty cool. It's a good movie. It's a good movie. But that's not the part. But anyways, back to the thing. So they go into the living room and they have this conversation about mortality and how people disappear when they get older. They are still there physically, but like they aren't there mentally anymore. That's at least the reading I got from that scene. With the father stating that he misses his wife, who's the mother, and also the way that Lucy has to take care of the housework just says a lot. Like, it's very clear that Jake lost his parents when you watch the movie, and it's very clear that Jake lost his parents to some kind of mental infliction, at least on the mother, because she has tinnitus and she just isn't doing well at any point in her life, apparently. She's an oppressed house mother in the 60s. She says that you have to live a little. So Lucy, when she goes into the basement, and the father is very dismissive of women and what they can do and what fields they can be in, because Lucy constantly changes her field. She is into every single thing on planet Earth that a good girlfriend would be into, depending on how you view that. And she's very clearly made out to be this like perfect person, and that's actually one of the reasons why I think she has red hair, because there is this thing in media where women with red hair are more adventurous, they are more outspoken, they are just more interesting, and they are the desired character for men to gaze upon. And you actually see this a lot in action movies and movies about witches and books about witches and like books about the extraordinary. a lot of the characters have red hair. Also, I watched Aquaman earlier with my dad, and that like the woman in that has red hair, and I hate her guts. I just hate her. Maybe if I actually bother to watch the whole movie, I will make a movie review about that. Who knows? But anyways, back to this. I think that that is why she has red hair. I think she has red hair because that is the stereotypical outlook on women in media. A lot of women have red hair in media, and that is to categorize them as a free spirit who is full of life. Um, so that's really interesting, actually, especially when you contradict that with her constant refrain of "I'm thinking of ending things." And when you hear it for the first time, you think, "Oh, she's thinking of ending things with Jake." But then later in the movie, you realize that because she isn't real, and this is all playing out of Jack's mind, not Jack. Who the fuck is Jack? I don't know Jake. Jake's mind, then it's actually his own mind echoing this back at him and trying to convince him why he shouldn't die. Like, Jake is actually a really nice person. Jake does all these wonderful things. Jake is a wonderful person, and Jake deserves the best. But Jake himself can't hear that because Lucy keeps it locked in her head. So it's all these really positive ways of looking at Jake that she actually goes through. She has to jump through a bunch of hoops, according to herself. Like, that's the impression you get when you listen to her. But this also means that Jake isn't going to get the affirmation he needs to not do what he ends up doing in the end. But anyways, back to the story. So, the moment when it clicked in my head that something was up was the moment when Lucy suddenly is wearing what is basically the stereotypical wife of the 70s, the 60s era, where she's wearing pearls and she's wearing like a nice evening type gown. That was the moment it clicked in my head that that wasn't what she was wearing before. And then I realized that the parents had also changed, and it just clicked in my head that Jake is the only one who's actually staying pretty consistent. But after that, after Lucy actually touches the mother, because the mother has really tried to touch Jake a lot, like, she's very clearly trying to connect to her son, and only through this other figment of her son's imagination after she is dead does she get to have that physical contact with Lucy, the fake ass girlfriend, who can't decide on her name or her major or her personality or where they met. But at that point, as soon as I saw that, I thought that the movie was about how you marry your parents, you know? Like, it was gonna loop back so that Jake comes home to Jake and Lucy with another girlfriend. And it was gonna be a loop about how you marry your parents and you marry into the same family dynamic that you always have had. But it didn't do that, so at least it wasn't predictable for me, who is not a very predictable person. So you know what, that's fine. Good for us. Good for us. And then the dog happens, and the dog confused me so much. I don't actually know if that is when the dog happens or if it's another part, but you know what? The dog shaking actually made me really uncomfortable for a variety of reasons. Mostly because I have seen dogs, they don't like to shake that much, and also the way that the dog shook from side to side played like a loop, so it just made me uncomfortable. A lot of them made me uncomfortable. But anyways, then they eat a Yule chocolate cake. I don't know what that's called. But basically the mom is like, "Oh, there's such a long time for Yule. We just passed it, and it's snowing outside, and that's the main driving force for getting out of the house. The fact that it keeps snowing, and Lucy has to go to work tomorrow." Which is of course then a refrain from Jake that he has to go to work tomorrow, and he works as janitor because he's a very old man, and the entire movie is intercut with these cuts of Jake as an old man. And also, I want to point something out right now because I can and I will. and this is already very rambly, and you know what? I can't contain myself. Jake is a pervert. There, I said it. My reading of a lot of the scenes with old Jake is that he's a pervert. First of all, there is the scene where he lures at the girl on stage, and that can just be because he really likes the production of Oklahoma, but the way that a girl's reaction is, it's definitely not, oh, thank you for watching. It's, you disgusting old man, get away from me. And that really hit me. Like, just the way her face split, it just really hit me that she did not appreciate it. It was unsolicited, and she felt really uncomfortable about it. And then there is the scene later with it, which is the dance scene. And if you haven't seen the dance scene, then shame on you. It's amazing. When it came up, I was like, yes, this fits perfectly in this movie. You know what? I have never seen something that fit as well in a movie as this dance scene with the clones of the characters. And that scene is before that scene, before they get into the high school. There is a scene where they're kissing in the car, and the old man, who's actually Jake, comes, like, it glitches into screen and is watching them in a really perverted way, you know, like the I'm looking through the keyhole into the girls' locker room kind of way. And the way that we basically only see girls react to him at the school makes me feel like he's a pervert that lures on the girls when they change. You know? Like, that just fits in my brain. And then in the dance thing, Lucy and Jake, young Jake, get married, and then she gets stolen away after a climatic fight in the snow. Because it's still snowing, people. It's always snowing in this movie, except when it's not snowing. Then it's only snowing on the car. Don't mix that up. But it's always snowing. Then the old man steals Lucy. And at that moment, I thought, okay, so Lucy is an actual person. But, like, it's an actual person that Creeper Jake molested at some point. That was my immediate thought. Because he was also being a creeper in the car. He was like, baby, it's cold outside. It's just like a really warm, snuggly, romantic story. And she wants to stay, but she's just so scared of, like, the way that people will perceive her. And, like, yeah, I can totally see the reading of that. That was how I read it for a real long time. Until it got to my attention that, like, the words that she says in response to him is literally, I want to leave. Please let me leave. But basically he defends that. And then he's really creepy in the whole car scene. And that just made me really feel like at some point in his life, Jake had molested some woman, probably actually the other woman, because there is a point in the car when Lucy changed into this other woman. And I believe she's actually in the movie that Jenna watches, but that's beside the point. There's also the girl with the rash in the ice cream parlor. And I believe that both of those are actually people he could have molested at some point. And I also believe that the two popular girls who he gets intimidated by may also have been somebody he molested at some point. And it's like his old sins coming back to haunt him. And I know that is a very, very radical reading of that. Just like, yes, he lurk on people and he steals a woman. He must clearly be a molester. But in some weird way, it just fits in my brain, you know, not because all old men are molesters. I just believe that this old man definitely has some properties to him that could be seen as predatory. And one of those is how he lurks at all the girls, all the young girls at the school. He looks at two girls and one of them mocks him. And then there is a girl on stage that is clearly uncomfortable with him looking at her. Then there is the stealing of a woman and forcing her into what could be conceived to be a relationship based on the rest of the dance. and he literally murders his old self. So I believe that he has molested somebody, most likely a red-headed woman who wore something akin to what um, the character of Lucy wore. And I believe that he molested her because that is the most clean cut explanation I have. And it would also explain her appearance better. It would explain why she's wearing what she wears. It would explain a lot of things. And maybe he only molested one woman. Maybe it only happened once and he's actually feeling so much regret that she actually turned into a manifestation of his regret in his mind. I can totally believe that. That makes sense. But point is that I believe that old man Jake has molested somebody, and most likely they appear as Lucy to him. Um, to shoot down all his notions of goodness in a weird way. Because another thing that I found really weird is how Jake, throughout the thing, actually defends certain groups of people. He says that he doesn't like that a lady uh, called people for sissies, and later he says that homosexuality is not actually a mental illness. And Lucy literally has to be like, yeah, I know that. Boy, I know that. So I think that either it's like is this manifestation of I wish that I had done better in life, or it's this chastisement of himself. Clearly he likes women to a certain point because like he doesn't ever portray a woman as bad except for his mother. Um, he portrays women as something to be intimidated by and be feared. But he doesn't ever portray a woman as a monster. So I think that maybe Jake has some problems that aren't actual problems, but like some things that he would like to have done in his life, and some feelings he may have wanted to act on but never got the opportunity to. Because one thing is saying, well, I don't think that you should say that, to be like, well, homosexuality isn't actually a mental illness. It was just a very quick, very defensive stand to take. Um, and I just think that that's interesting that two aspects of Jake's mind are debating that. Even if it's literally just a confirmation of, yes, that's stupid, it still feels like it has some weight. Especially in such and it's a very painterish movie, you know, like it's a very colorful movie, it's very styled. Like the whole last part of the movie is just off the walls insane in a weird way. Like there are random people dancing, a whole mute dance number with an amazing score, and then the last scenes of Jay performing Oklahoma. Like the whole thing is just batshit crazy. Especially intermixed with the old man and the talking animated pig. It's just really weird. I love it, but it's really, really weird, and I'm probably never gonna watch that movie again. Um, I think it's a one time experience if you're watching it just to know what is happening. It's a multi watch experience if you want to understand it, and I don't particularly need to understand it. I'm okay with that. Um, but anyways, back to like the story walkthrough that I apparently completely abandoned because it's just me. Like, if you got this far, congratulations. Comment rainbow sparkles in the comments so I know that you got to this point. But anyways, back to the movie. So the parents keep changing ages, and Lucy gets sent into the basement where she finds multiple paintings that she herself claims to have painted before that scene, or something akin to those paintings. But it was actually Jake, and that was the first like major clue that confirmed that they are indeed the same. Um, it was the fact that Jake had labeled her artwork as his that just kind of confirmed it in my brain that yes, these people are intriguingly connected. At that point, I was still on my "oh, you marry your parents" thought. In a weird way, I was like, oh, okay, so this means that they are going to have a child, and that child is going to take after the mother despite being named after the father, and then he's gonna grow up and like the parents be very dismissive of his art because it was something that the parents were. They were like, "Oh, Jake used to paint. He stopped. Oh, Jake never got anything more than a second place medal, and then he stopped." You know, like it's very dismissive of him. So I thought that was what was gonna happen. But then as I got to learn more about Lucy, I just realized that no, she wouldn't have been that kind of mother. So that actually makes no sense. Um, but anyways, then they jump around a bit more in time, and the parents get really old, and the mother dies, and Jake is there to take care of her throughout her entire life, but she never really knows that, and his father doesn't understand that, and nobody knows that he's actually doing all these really good things for his parents because they are so caught up in themselves. I think that's the point of it all. Well, basically, people are blind to see when you're doing good, except if you scream it, and if you scream it, then you're not actually doing good for the sake of doing good, you're doing good for the sake of praise. And I think that is the criticism of the movie. I think that's what the movie is trying to talk about. Um, I also think it's really interesting that most of the characters in the movie are very light skinned, and it takes place in Oklahoma. Until the last scene, there are no colored people. I don't know if the girl in the ice cream parlor can be considered colored or not. And I'm sorry for using that word if that offends you, but I just don't know what other words to use. Um, but the girl in the ice cream parlor, I think she's white, but I don't know. So I'm gonna put a big ass question mark on that because I don't want to offend people by putting them in the wrong boxes. So big ass question mark. I have no clue who that is or what she does. I know that she is apparently one of the fixed points in time, and it's her. Like Lucy recognizes her even, and that was really interesting. Which is why I think that maybe Jake molested her as well. But maybe it's just somebody in their life because they are the same person, so it's their life, of course. There's also a thought that I had, which is related to the sissy and the quick defending of homosexuals part, which is that Jake has imagined a woman as part of his life. And I know that that can be. This is gonna be a reading that is a little bit queer because I am a little bit queer, so you know what, I can do a little bit queer reading. But anyways, uh, one of the thoughts that I had was maybe Jake is actually, trans, but he just never had the opportunity to tell his parents because he grew up in the 60s. Because a lot of the things in the movie just kind of says that he grew up in the 60s because, like, in the end, he's a very old man. Um, and they come out in, like, the 2020s, just in the beginning of the 2020s. They were probably filmed also partly in the 2019. It's probably a really old idea. But anyways, I think that he grew up in the 50s or the 60s. And I think that he is 70 or 60 years old in the end, but I don't know. Also, this review has nothing to do with the book. I just realized that I hadn't said that. Fudge nuggets. This is very random, rambly. I'm sorry about that. But anyways, that was a thought that I had that maybe Jake is actually not Jake. Maybe Jake wants to be Lucy or Louisa, or maybe it's just, because he wants to bring home a girlfriend to his parents so they are proud of him. I don't know. It's just a thought. It's just a theory. A really undeveloped theory. But anyways, I just read a lot of queer subtext in the movie and it was really weird. I also read queer subtext in Aquaman, so maybe I'm just looking for queer subtext at the moment. I will never know. Sometimes my brain decides that it's looking for stuff and I don't know about it. But anyways, Lucy gets taken by the janitor at the end after the big climatic, I can't speak. But anyways, after mom dies, I know that I just jumped, but that's because I realized where I was actually meant to be. After mom dies, because she dies in one of the scenes in the living room, it was very tragic. Press F in the chat for mom. Dad comes in, father comes in, whatever his name is, dad, I'm just gonna call him dad. Dad comes in and he needs to go to the bathroom, and he probably peeing on some wall every time you can't find him, and yeah, great, good stuff. And then they actually finally leave, good for them. And Lucy realizes, like, in that moment, that she just followed her parents, like, Jake's parents for our time is actually a thing she says, not exactly like that, but she actually says that it feels like she has known Jake forever, and it feels like she's known his parents forever, even though it's only been 6 weeks according to her, but it's actually been, her whole life because she's part of Jake. Not the point. But anyways, Jake, he's a romantic idiot. And he decides to make up this fictitious lady to be his girlfriend. And he can't settle on anything because he wants to be as successful as possible, because the title I'm thinking of ending things is actually referring to suicide, which is a part of the book. So it's actually referring to the act of ending your life and not the act of ending a relationship that you don't want to be part of anymore. And it's actually really interesting when you think about the movie through that lens, because that means that Lucy is Jake's suicide compass in a weird way. She says that she wants to end things with Jake. She wants to stop this. She doesn't want to be part of it anymore. And because of that, because we know that she's part of Jake's mind, that takes on a different meaning. That Jake no longer sees a reason to be alive, and in the very end he even says that all the people he's ever met in his life and all the people who he has looked at and all the people he has absorbed into himself is the reason he's still alive. Or maybe even the reason why he is planning to die. We don't actually know where on the side he falls, but I personally read that as the reason I have lived for this long and now is ready to die. He also dies at the school after following the animated pig, so that's really interesting. It's also just interesting that pigs are such a big part of the movie, because there are pigs everywhere. Like, there are pigs who hold your money for you, there are pigs who died outside, there are pigs served for dinner, I think. I'm not entirely sure if that's pig or sheep. I don't eat sheep, so I wouldn't know. But the point is that there are just pigs everywhere, and then when the pig comes back in the end, and Jake is naked, it just kinda reminds me again of him being a pedo, or just like he's just a creep. Like, Jake is a creep. Jake doesn't have any luck with women, so he tries girls. That's kind of the feel I got from it. I'm just gonna put this here because I am tired and I don't want to make this. I got quite a bit. No, see, I get the whole screen this time. Okay. Anyways, I read just Jake as the massive creeper, and I read Lucy as his fictitious version of one of the women he actually molested or forced himself upon, sexually assaulted, whatever you want to say. And based on the way that he says that he sees the people from the school, like the people, there are students there who he cleans up after, that he sees them around town and they have changed. That tells me that... Sorry. That tells me that the way that he looks at the people he has hurt in his life is in a very weirdly positive way, that he has changed their lives. For the better, we don't know. For the worse, most likely. because he's a pedo. But anyways, those are my thoughts on I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It's a movie about this very old, creepy man who, I don't know if that's intentional that he's creepy, but it definitely feels like it was intentional in some of the shots, you know? He's very perverted at the very least. But it's about this man named Jake who is a creeper in his old life, who is really sad that he couldn't get a wife, who had to take care of his parents until they died, and who has been really affected by it, and really affected by the constant death around him, like his dog and the pigs, and then later his parents. And he sees life not as an endless stream that you have to be dragged along with, but instead fixed, like the people are the fixed points and the stream goes through us, not us in the stream. And he uses Lucy, who is this fictitious manifestation of probably victim, probably more than one victim actually, and he uses her to be an excuse for his behavior. And he uses his parents as an excuse for his behavior. And a lot of it is just him excusing himself through these people he puts in his fictitious life, where he goes out to be a successful theater actor, more specifically, and he gets to be with this wonderful ideal, he even calls her ideal, woman who stays with him all the way until he's old and grey. And the last scene, where they're all wearing the white face makeup, scared the living shit out of me. It may just be because I'm tired, but it literally scared the living shit out of me. I was like, oh my fucking god, what is wrong with their faces? And then when I realized what was wrong with their faces, I was like, yes, theater makeup! 10 out of 10! Would watch again. I don't know anything about Oklahoma, so I can't really speak on the theater aspect of it all a whole lot. I can speak I can speak about it on a certain level, but I am by no means an expert in Oklahoma or any other musical. But anyways, thank you for watching. If you watched all the way to the end, I hope you have a wonderful day. Kisses. Hope you have a good day. Hope you watch this movie if you found my taking on it interesting, and if you have watched it, please share with me what you read in all the characters. And goodbye.